Gosh, I'm trying to hold it in right now. The support's been overwhelming.
Tickets for Nashville this week are nearly sold out. We are calling this the Bryson effect.
I mean, with how much support we have out here, and it's just the start, that's a testament to what Live Golf is and what the Crushers are doing, what our team's doing, and what we're trying to do for Nashville and places all across the globe. So super excited for the future of Live.
It was nice to at least walk down the last few holes, or at least the last hole, knowing that it was pretty much done. It's never safe, but very proud of everybody, and of course Tiro. I mean, what a week to get his first win in a few years and win by 6 in an absolutely dominant performance the way he did. It was absolutely incredible, so I couldn't be happier for him.
Certainly with not winning for 3.5 years, you kind of naturally question if you can do it again. So I'm just proud of myself to be able to get through that and play the way I did.
Night number 1 of the 2024 NBA Draft as well. We will do that here, go fully through the first 30 picks that we saw last night and all of the biggest storylines from the 2024 NBA Draft. We'll also spin it around Major League Baseball, an extra full Wednesday card to recap on this Thursday, a Subway Series sweep. The Grimace Mets stay hot here in the month of June, and so much more, DRS, around Major League Baseball as well.
Yeah, and we're close, man. Next week we're going to be in the month of July, which again flips that calendar. We start looking forward to the NFL. But again, it is day number 2 in the NBA draft, which typically we say to ourselves, well, we're not used to it because we've never seen it before. But there's one big name out there that, right or wrong, should be drafted, not drafted, and what team is going to is Bronny James. That's going to lead the day on a lot of telecasts today, including this one right here.
It's a fascinating point because all of our draft coverage leading up to the NBA draft, one of the main storylines was Bronny James. Would he be drafted in which round? By the time the odds came out, it became pretty apparent he would be a second-round selection. And for the first time since 1989, when the NBA draft was condensed to only 2 rounds, it's the first time that we have a 2-day event for the NBA draft, which means day number 2, and the focus on Bronny James only ramps up. So we start by looking back on round number 1 of the 2024 NBA draft, and we start, of course, at the very top. DRS, when we were together yesterday, Zachary Rizache out of France was a minus 480 favorite to be the first overall selection made by the Atlanta Hawks. In the closing moments before Atlanta went on the clock last night inside the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, that odds and the number worked even more in his favor at minus 2,000 to be that first overall selection. So what was expected then became official. With the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft, Zachary Rizache on his way to Atlanta.
Yeah, another kid from France there, fresh off of last year, another one from France, and sure we'll get to that number 2 pick here. But the interesting part about this, too, is, like, sometimes because we are handicappers, right? And again, it's not as if you're putting tons of money down on each one of these selections. Yeah. And the reason I bring that up, Ben, is when you're taking a look overall and you say to yourself, all right, that line goes from minus 490 back to 390 back to 550. It was moving around yesterday on the early line, no doubt about it. Yeah. But looking at it, Did anybody get in late? Like, do you know anybody that gets in late? Like, okay, it's minus 2,000.
Yeah.
This is a sure thing. Even if I'm going to pick up $10 or $15, because I feel like sometimes I need to do that myself and I don't. So, interesting case scenario where that line moves. And I don't know who got down on it late because it was a lock. It seemed like that he was going to be number one.
Last year, I just wanted to be a part of history, so I bet a minus 20,000 number on Victor Wembanyama to go first overall because we knew that was a virtual certainty, even here in the gambling space when nothing is exactly a guarantee. But in the last 2 weeks, so much movement on Zachary Rizache and his fellow countryman, Alex Sarr. Sarr was the original odds-on favorite in minus money to be that first overall pick. Never worked out for the Hawks organization. So a minus 190 number on Sarr just about 2 weeks ago was a plus money price. Rizache was plus 185 then. That's when I bet it. Cashed a big plus money ticket to begin the 2024 NBA draft. So at number 2 overall, that's where Alex Sarr goes. He closed as a minus 1,100 favorite to be that second overall pick to the Washington Wizards. For the second consecutive year, DRS, we see 2 French players drafted first overall, Victor Wembanyama in 2023, Zachary Rizache here in 2024. The first time in NBA draft history in back-to-back seasons, a non-U.S. college basketball player goes first overall, and then we saw another Frenchman off the board immediately after with Alex Sarr.
Yeah, you know what? You take a look at Alex Sarr, and the pick, why it's interesting to me is he goes number 2, but honestly, we probably should have thought that he was going number 2 from a long time. But having said that, why didn't he work out, by the way, for anybody else at this point? Like, why didn't he work out for a number 1 team, which they might have picked him number 1? Did we ever get differentiation of why he did that?
He was asked ahead of the NBA draft earlier this week in Brooklyn. He said he wasn't going to go into the specifics of his workouts, but welcomed any organization. I don't know if he was hell-bent on being a member of the Washington Wizards, who had the second worst record last year in the association at 15-67. I'm not exactly sure the reason. Maybe he didn't want to go to the ATL and season of uncertainty from this point on after selecting Rizache. What are they going to do with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray? But for whatever reason, he ends up in the nation's capital. The Wizards actually had 2 more picks last night in the opening round as well, 14th overall and 24th overall, as we will recap. Let's round out the top 5. Reed Sheppard out of Kentucky goes 3rd overall to Houston. 4th overall, Steph Castle makes his way to San Antonio. And DRS, the NBA draft handicapper, he knew it yesterday. Ron Holland, who he had as a top 10 pick at a minus 105 number, goes top 5 to Detroit.
How about that? Case closed. Man, it was maybe the best handicap of the night overall, but it is an interesting top 5. The one guy that I think we supposed to was saying, you know, it's going to go number 4. It was Steph Castle. Yeah. And to be honest with you, if you're looking for an NBA-ready player with the chance to mature over the next 1 to 2 years, I really like his game, and I think it's going to work out. Those G League guys, we don't get to see a lot of, but if they did go to college, you're taking a look at those 4- and 5-star prospects and see how they turn out. But I did like that move for Steph Castle. I think he's going to be a quality player here in the NBA.
And from the betting odds perspective, the first 4 picks were exactly as expected. Chalk, Rizache a hefty favorite. Same with Alex Sarr at 2nd overall. Reed Sheppard closed as close to a $3 favorite in minus money to be that 3rd overall selection made by the Houston Rockets. Steph Castle minus 180 to be the 4th overall pick. In fact, DRS, on FanDuel, they were giving you the exacta, the correct order of the first 4 selections. In that order, Rizache 1 to Atlanta, Sarr 2 to Washington, Sheppard 3 to the Rockets, and Castle 4th overall to San Antonio, minus 140. Exactly what expected. Ron Holland was the first upset. And Tijan Salon at 6th overall to the Charlotte Hornets, also a slight upset. He was favored to be a top 10 selection, but that early in that spot, with Donovan Clingan on the board right behind, that was really the first small surprise that we had in last night's NBA draft.
Yeah, and you know, it is interesting, too, because you're taking a look at Donovan Clingan, who was a sensational player in the NCAA action the past 2 seasons, those 2 runs for UConn. We thought he had a legitimate chance, and I told you yesterday, quite a long shot at a 20-1 price for him actually to be number 2 overall.
That was your best bet, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, come on now, Clingan. I mean, what happened, man? Should have been number 2. But he didn't go there, but I think you did get value down the line. Is there a reason, like, did we hear from why Donovan Clingan dropped? And also to the second point here, the draft isn't that great overall for superstar power, but we thought we'd get some interesting choices after number 1 at this point, and we did with Klingon dropping.
From the betting odds perspective, that's why it was so fascinating looking at the big man out of Connecticut, because he had the second best price yesterday to be the number 1 overall pick, second best price to be the 3rd overall pick, second best price to be the 5th overall pick. He did close as a plus 340 favorite to go 7th overall, but he was never really the favored guy in any of the spots along the way, despite closing with a minus 390 price to be a top 5 selection. Portland did not have to move and got the guy they wanted probably more than anybody else in this 2024 NBA draft. Rob Dillingham was drafted 8th overall by San Antonio, but his trade rights sent right away to the Minnesota Timberwolves. An interesting move as the T-Wolves give back a 2030 and 2031 first-round selection to get Rob Dillingham. DRS, the team that reached the Western Conference Finals and was favored to win the Western Conference crown in that series against the Dallas Mavericks, gets a guy in the top 10 in the lottery and an absolute bucket getter at the guard position out of Kentucky.
I really like that move, too, because you're taking a look at a team, and when you have multiple superstars and a lot of money spent, how do you sort of supplement that talent? You get it through the draft because the draft picks aren't going to cost you that much money. And then you could say to yourself, like, well, what are you going to give up the next 2-3 years? They got a pick coming through that when their superstars are, certainly in their prime, they're going to be good. And you say, well, what are we going to do anyway with the 30th overall pick in the draft? Loved what I saw out of Minnesota last night.
And then Zach Edey, 9th overall to the Memphis Grizzlies, cashing my best bet of the day, under 14.5 with some plus money. I said it was worth a sprinkle, top 10 at the time yesterday on the early line, plus 320. At the end of the day, 5-1. Zach Edey, a plus money machine. Plenty more on the early line up next.
SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Fantasy sports today.
Can it be a guy that's really useful in your fantasy rotation? I think the answer is yes.
Game time decisions.
I'm going to lose the bet because he's injured again.
Betting above the rim.
He's got a broke J. That's all there is to it. He's got no confidence in that jump shot.
My thing you've always heard me say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Wondering when that was going to happen, and the answer is it just
Sometimes
did.
The bigger guy will have the advantage. Well, if the little guy can move, Joe, it's hard to hit the little guy sometimes when you're a big boy, right?
In-game live, prime time.
40-1, I'm going to take a little flyer on Justin Rose.
In-game live, overtime.
As you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
After Atlanta won the draft lottery, that I was taking Ricochet number 1. When he was at plus 425, I said Ricochet's going number 1. Well, hot damn, who's the big minus money favorite to go number 1 in the draft? Zachary Ricochet. Hopefully you had jumped on this earlier enough because the trains left the station.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A 2024 NBA Draft opening round recap live right here on this Thursday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Donnie Rightside, Ben Stevens live in studio for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Let's focus on the bigs for just a second. Donovan Clingan out of Connecticut goes 7th overall to the Portland Trailblazers, plus 340 to be that actual overall slot selection in the opening round of the NBA Draft. Zach Edey had a 5-to-1 price, plus 500 to be a top 10 pick. His draft position over under 14.5, and the under had plus money. In a national championship game between UConn and Purdue, we focused on the big 7-2 Clingan, 7-4 Edey. If the year was 1984 and not 2024, they would have gone 1-2 to start this draft, but both still top 10 picks.
Yeah, and you like to see that. And also, let's keep in mind, what happens if we actually had been a truly stacked draft all the way through? Where does Zach Edey actually land at this point? So a lot of these players benefited and also going to benefit in their bank account for getting drafted much, much higher. But I talked about it yesterday. We're not worried about Donovan Clingan in the NBA because what if a big can run up and down the court and is super athletic, he's always going to have a job. The problem is, what is Zach Edey going to give you? But I also counted that point saying, you know exactly what you get day number one. Like, Zach Edey's not like, okay, he's over 7 foot. What a reclamation project. Let's see if he can actually get some minutes. Like, you can plug and play him and get decent minutes, and that's worth a lot to a team like Memphis that if you're looking to make the playoffs or get back into the picture with Ja Morant, this is the perfect guy because it's not an extension of, well, in a couple years, Ben, let's see what we have. He should be good to go right away.
And it was also wee last night at the very start. 2 French players drafted 1 and 2 for the 12th consecutive season. 2 international players taken in the top 10 picks of an NBA draft. Rounding out the top 10, Colorado's Cody Williams. He goes to the Utah Jazz. He had a very heavy minus money price to be a top 10 pick, and that's where he ends up. The first round selection for Colorado men's basketball since 2017, and Derek White, who just won an NBA championship with the Boston Celtics. So let's continue to move through the opening round of the 2024 NBA Draft. Because of some of the surprising picks, perhaps, Ron Holland at 5th overall, Tijan Salon early at number 6 to the Charlotte Hornets, Zach Edey, a slight upset as well. We did see one early slide and then a second bigger slide that we'll detail in this grouping from 11 to 20. First, it was Modest Buzelis, who was the favorite to be the 5th overall pick to Detroit. He stays in the Midwest, but goes to his native Chicago. From Hinsdale, Illinois, a suburb of the Chicagoland area. The native drafted by the Bulls with the 11th overall number.
Yeah, and again, this gets back to that point where you're looking at that top 10, and you can have a lot of intrigue in a draft where you don't really know where these guys are slotted because different draft boards, Ben, are going to be so much different. But I think you found a pretty good home here. And also, if we're just looking at projections, maybe the Chicago Bulls had him as the 3rd overall player and got him at 11. That's what you look forward to in that draft room. Who's going to fall to you where you might have thought, like, I might have to go after a Devin Carter or somebody else like a Jared McCain. But when you get that player, like, I didn't think he would be around, which, again, in the press conference, boy, oh boy, never did we think he was going to be there. I think this is one of those where you're saying to yourself, like, yes, we got one of the steals of the draft, we believe.
Plus 120, a short number to be that 5th overall pick to the Detroit Pistons. Did not go 5, goes to Chicago at 11. So you get an idea of the context around Modest Buzelis. By the way, the Pistons drafting 5th for the 3rd consecutive year, despite having the worst record in the NBA the past 2 seasons. Already the dismissal of Monty Williams, a lot to figure out in Detroit. The Rockets, who drafted Reed Shepherd 3rd overall, their 4th consecutive NBA draft with a top 4 pick. Nikola Topic goes 12th overall out of Serbia, playing professional basketball already at 18 years old in the competitive Adriatic League. He goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. We know what is the case for OKC with their general manager, Sam Presti. So many picks. But, Donnie, it's not often that you had a team that finished 1st in the Western Conference as that 1 seed in the postseason have a lottery pick. It's what Oklahoma City was capable of doing.
Look, and this is what you had to get ready for when you were taking a look at the OKC over the past couple of years. We knew they had a lot of good young talent on that roster, but the question was going to be, are you going to keep those picks moving forward? Are you going to add that veteran talent? They were so good last year with that young roster. They're continuing to stack the deck. And so many times we talk about guys eventually are going to get paid. If you can build through the draft, You save on that luxury tax and that salary cap. This is a healthy organization right now that got another good basketball player.
As the draft process began, DRS, Topic was thought of maybe being a top 5, top 10 pick, a very raw 18-year-old who was supposed to present length at the guard position. Wingspan wasn't as big as people expected. Also tore his ACL during the draft process as well. But OKC's in no rush to bring him to the NBA immediately and needing an impact out of him starting next season. Love the pick. Devin Carter, who was the favorite to go 8th, 9th, and 10th overall, ends up going 13th overall to the Sacramento Kings out of Providence, the 2023-24 Big East Player of the Year. And rounding out the lottery, Bub Carrington out of Pittsburgh. Just the second ever lottery pick, or first-round selection, rather, for the Panthers basketball program in the modern draft era.
That's pretty interesting, too, because there's a lot of great basketball players running through there in the Big East throughout the 80s and 90s, but there are some changes. Also, getting back to that pick here with Topic, you know, you move on from Josh Giddey, you get that replacement right away. And also, sometimes it's tough, though. Those stash players, which is a young guy, you never truly know how they're going to come off a knee injury, but with the way that you can repair those ACLs at this point, he's so young, you probably figure he might even see the court next year late in the season. And then you have your point guard of the future is what you're hoping there as well.
So the big storyline from the outside of the lottery was Dalton Knecht, who was the favorite yesterday to be the 6th overall pick. A draft position prop of 7.5 in the under had the heavy juice. He falls all the way outside of the lottery into 17th overall to the Los Angeles Lakers, who were more than thrilled to have him fall into their lap under a new head coach in J.J. Redick. Dalton Knecht makes his way out to the City of Angels.
Just a pure bucket, and it fits perfectly. And there's a couple teams in front of him, Miami Heat fans, Philadelphia 76ers fans, like, this is the perfect guy because he's a bucket the minute he gets into the league. But the fact of the matter is, I love this where it says, well, he's old, as if he was Chris Weinke coming in at 28 or 29 years old to the NFL. This guy's like, what, 23 years old and automatically knows how to score, which is so tough to do anyway in the NBA. I love what the Lakers did there. That's a great pick for the Los Angeles Lakers.
The SEC's leading scorer last year for the Volunteers, averaging nearly 22 points per game. How do you feel about Jared McCain making his way to Philly?
Look, you know me. I love three-point shooters. The Sixers got themselves a three-point shooter, but people are so mad they passed on Dalton Knecht. They can't understand the value of the pick for the Sixers. Another short guard in the backcourt. Tough scene.
Dalton Knecht, the Cooper DeJean of the 2024 NBA draft. Some have been saying. The rest of the opening round up next.
When it comes to betting on sports, injuries matter, and Sports Injury Central has you covered all year long with expert injury analysis and injury-based picks for the NFL, NBA, and MLB. Our former pro sports doctors have unmatched experience to analyze every injury so you know the impact of the player, team, and their upcoming matchup. Whether it's articles, podcasts, player insights, or our patented injury scores, Sports Injury Central will help you keep up with your fantasy team and make more informed wagers. So make sure you follow Sports Injury Central and gain an edge at SixScore.com.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid, our NBA draft opening round recap continues. So outside of the lottery, love the pick, by the way, at 15th overall for the Miami Heat. Khalil Ware out of Indiana now makes his way to South Beach. In many spots, considered a top 20 selection. He goes 15th overall. A big night for Colorado basketball. Tristan De Silva, the 18th overall pick to the Orlando Magic. Cody Williams, 10th overall to Utah. De Silva, 18th overall to Orlando. They hadn't had a first-round pick since 2017 in Derek White. The first time in the modern draft era for CU Buffs basketball that two players go in the opening round in the same NBA draft. And then we saw two Baylor Bears, Jacoby Walter, 19th overall to Toronto, Yves Missi, 21st overall to the New Orleans Pelicans, sandwiched in between Jalen Tyson to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So let's keep it rolling here, 21 through 30. Donnie, an intriguing betting perspective for Deron Holmes II, who was often linked throughout this draft process to the Denver Nuggets, but originally at 22 was the Phoenix Suns. They trade back to go to 28. They add a second-round pick as well from Denver, and the Nuggets get their guy in Deron Holmes. In many different markets, Deron Holmes was favored to be the 28th overall pick, where Denver originally resided. If you thought you had it right, Deron Holmes to Denver, you did, just not in the correct draft slot.
Yeah, and again, a lot of moving parts in this draft, and this is where we're getting into that bottom of the first round, which, yes, they are first-round draft picks. That's what it's going to say on their player card, but some of these guys that we, including myself, haven't heard of all that much. You're starting to learn about them on the fly. I'm sure there'll be quality basketball players at this point, but as you pointed out, some teams have those draft boards much, much different. It's not just like that Mel Kiper's list. Like, I can't believe we didn't draft that guy. There were so many moving parts, particularly in the late part of this draft, where some teams really valued certain positions more than others, and it showed up.
There were two spots in this grouping of 21 to 30 that left me last night live on air saying, huh? A.J. Johnson, 23rd overall, who played in the NBL, that's Australia's Pro League, played in only 26 games, averaging less than 8 minutes per game. With the Milwaukee guy in Tyler Kolek out of Marquette still on the board, an interesting move for the Bucks to get an undeveloped project. And then, listen, it's been a good 46 hours or so, 48 hours for the New York Knicks. Everything that happened on draft eve, the re-signing of OG Anunoby a few hours prior to the NBA draft getting underway last night. But Pacome Dadier out of France, another spot where I was left saying, huh? The Knicks actually traded 24th back to the Washington Wizards, who came up to make their third pick of the opening round. They get Keyshawn George out of Miami. They also traded 26. They were supposed to select back-to-back in two different spots yesterday during the opening round of the NBA draft. They only make one pick. It's Pacome Dadier out of France.
Now, is this guy going to come over? Is this the stash guy in a couple years? We'll see him, because we're loaded up on talent number one, but also loaded up in payroll. So sometimes it does make sense where you say, okay, can't come over. Maybe if you improve, you'll be able to come back over and we'll slide you in.
It was clear that after signing OG Anunoby to a 5-year, $212.5 million deal, the Knicks don't have a lot to spend elsewhere this offseason. So it was almost like they decided in the Knicks front office, we'll draft this French guy, Dadier. He's a huge project, maybe with some upside down the line when the bankroll opens up a little bit. He'll be in Westchester for the time being in the G League. We joked last night they're going to make the trip across the East River from Brooklyn. They'll drive past Madison Square Garden, say hello, and then he'll make his way over to Westchester. Second pick of the opening round for OKC as they trade with the New York Knicks for that second spot. Dylan Jones out of Weber State, the Big Sky MVP. That's the player of the year. And a great moment toward the end of the opening round, Terrence Shannon Jr. goes 27th overall to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Of course, Terrence Shannon Jr. just 2 weeks ago acquitted of a rape charge and sexual assault charge in Douglas County in Lawrence, Kansas. He had a year in which his reputation and his name were damaged significantly. He missed 6 games, and that followed him around. He faced vile chants from opposing fan bases both in person and online. To be acquitted of any wrongdoing and to hear his name called on the opening night of the NBA draft, a big moment for TSJ last night in Chicago.
Big deal, and he's a bucket, too. Usually it's the teams that we look at, Ben, and say, why do you have a couple first-round draft picks? Well, you're a bad team, you stockpiled them, and you're supposed to have a good draft. A team that gets all the way into their season like you saw last year out of the Timberwolves with a legitimate chance to win it all, I thought they had a great first round because you got ready-made talent that should be able to step right in and get buckets right away.
23 points per game for Terrence Shannon Jr. alongside Anthony Edwards and Rob Dillingham. They might run up the score in Minneapolis in years to come. The third most points nationally for TSJ in college hoops a season ago. How the first round came to a close and the rest of this NBA summer. That's up next, live right here on TPL.
SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Fantasy sports today.
Can it be a guy that's really useful in your fantasy rotation? I think the answer is yes.
Game time decisions.
I'm going to lose the bet because he's injured again.
Betting above the rim.
He's got a broke J. That's all there is to it. He's got no confidence in that jump shot.
My thing you've always heard me say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Wondering when that was going to happen, and the answer is it just
Sometimes
did.
the bigger guy will have the advantage. Well, if the little guy can move, Joe, it's hard to hit the little guy sometimes when you're a big boy, right?
In-game live, prime time.
40-1, I'm going to take a little flyer on Justin Rose.
In-game live, overtime.
As you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
After Atlanta won the draft lottery, that I was taking Ricochet number 1. When he was at plus 425, I said Ricochet's going number 1. Well, hot damn. Who's the big minus money favorite to go number 1 in the draft? Zachary Ricochet. Hopefully you had jumped on this earlier enough because the trains left the station.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong. This is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
So let's round out the first 30. The first 30 picks of the first round of the 2024 NBA Draft. At number 28 overall, out of Virginia, a defender makes his way to Phoenix. That's Ryan Dunn. He can defend the crap out of the basketball. That's what you learn under the pack line defense under Tony Bennett. Isaiah Collier on a slide not only throughout the NBA Draft's opening round last night, but really the entirety of the draft process. DRS, an intriguing year for a trio of freshmen at USC, and of course, there will be a ton of attention paid to that tonight in round number 2 with Bronny James, but he was alongside Isaiah Collier and Boogie Ellis. All three guys expected to have bright NBA futures. There was a time entering last college basketball season, people looked at Collier as a top 5, top 10, but surefire lottery pick. He goes all the way down to 29 with the Utah Jazz select him with the second to last pick of the first round.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see, right, if we didn't have a one-and-done rule basically in college basketball, or if you could just go right out of high school into the NBA where he would have wound up. Draft stock was hurt, but people are still going to take a look at that upside, Ben, and say there's something in there that we saw from high school. Maybe the coaching staff at USC didn't get a lot out of him, but also you can lean on back and say, boy, SC had a lot of talent last year and underwhelmed for basically the entire season. Maybe it was just the coaching staff at this point. So I don't mind it. When you're taking talent at the end of the first round, you're just looking for flyers. And if it turns out to be a good one there, that's a great pick.
The Utah Jazz, one of a few teams last night that made multiple selections or at least acquired multiple first-round draft picks. The Jazz, the Thunder made 2. The Minnesota Timberwolves ended up with 2 draft picks, Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. And the Washington Wizards continue continue a unique draft trend, in my opinion. The Wizards becoming the only team this year to make 3 first-round selections, but there has been a team in the last 9 consecutive NBA drafts to make at least 3 first-round picks. Part of that is because the Wizards traded Donnie earlier in the day to Portland. In return, the Blazers traded their second lottery pick, 14th overall, to the Wiz. It was part of a day of NBA draft moves and NBA signings. Not going to skip him here. Baylor Shireman is the last pick of the first round, 30th overall to the Boston Celtics. I hate how much I love that pick because I think Shireman is a great prospect with a ton of upside, ready-made to contribute for Boston, and the Celtics don't need any more riches after winning an NBA championship.
No, they certainly don't. And also, doesn't this pick fit in perfectly for them when that second line comes in? You see the Pritchards of the world dropping 3-pointers, the Hausers of the world, and now you just add this guy in there as well. I love to see that because, again, luxury picks at the end of the first round, you're not looking so much for impact starters, but just a guy that can come in and help the team. He can actually do that for the Celtics, who were champions last year.
Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, what do they have in common with Baylor Shireman?
They're both Boston Celtics.
Oh, very good point. That's true. And can shoot the basketball, as you said. So, a big day yesterday around the NBA draft. Of course, on draft eve, it was the blockbuster deal between the two teams in the Big Apple. Mikal Bridges traded by Brooklyn to the New York Knicks. And the question then became, how are the Knickerbockers going to approach the rest of this summer? Do they even have enough money to re-sign guys like Isaiah Hartenstein and OG Anunoby? What is Julius Randle's future in New York? At least one of those questions answered yesterday afternoon. OG Anunoby will remain with this Knicks franchise, a 5-year, $212.5 million deal to return to New York. He was acquired last January by this Knicks team midway through the season, traded from the Toronto Raptors. He will remain in Manhattan inside Madison Square Garden. And the Knicks, despite an interesting decision later in the draft, had a great day leading up to the 2024 NBA draft.
The fantastic move, because we were talking about this yesterday, saying, well, you know what? All these players on this team, there's probably going to be an odd man out. We figured it probably would be OG Anunoby. He re-signs. And also, there's 2 ways to look at this, Ben, right? From the Knicks organization and fan base, they're loving it because that gets you so energized for next year. If you're a Knicks fan, you can't wait for tip-off because you saw the excitement this year, you added talent, and also on top of that, you're keeping the talent around that got you there. Now, also keep in mind, if you're saying they overpaid, guys, just get ready for the contracts that are coming down the line because of the increase from the CBA and all that TV deal money coming in. But if you are the Knicks, like, what were you supposed to do? Hey, you know what? Let's be physically responsible here. We have a really good team anyway. We'll let OG go. No, your time is right now. If you figure you can make a run to an NBA championship, sign these guys, max out that cap, trade those picks away, and go for it. I like what the Knicks organization is doing here, Ben.
40-plus mil for OG Anunoby might seem steep in comparison to where the cap is in the NBA. It's really not as of this moment. And when you take into consideration the deals that Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges are playing under, for that trio to remain in New York all alongside one another, not too shabby. And you have 2 of the best perimeter defensive wings in all of the NBA now in the same roof under Tom Thibodeau, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. And don't just take our word for it on how optimistic and positive these moves have been for the New York Knicks in the past 48 hours. Look at the odds perspective. The Knicks opened with a plus 750 price. That was 3rd best to win the Eastern Conference, but a large gap behind both Milwaukee and the Boston Celtics. After the trade for Bridges, it was 5-1, tied for the second best number with Milwaukee. As they re-signed OG Anunoby, the market tightens once again. $1.50 shaved off, plus 350. DRS, the New York Knicks have the second best price to win the Eastern Conference crown next NBA season. And once there was a substantial gap between Boston and everybody else, now it's just over $2 between the C's and the Knicks.
Yeah, Celtics are still the better team. We can understand that. But to be honest, when you're looking, and granted, free agency, Ben, we're still about a week away at this point, so changes will be made. But we are reactionary, and we're seeing what those lines right now would be. As you see that graphic once again, if you're telling me right now, again, nobody's made changes outside of them, the Knicks deserve to be there at that plus 350 price. They absolutely do. They showed you last year, if they could have been healthy throughout that playoff run with all of their players, who knows where they actually would have wound up. Now you're looking at them going into this season. They'll continue to tweak that roster. I like what I see out of the Knicks. They're deserving of being that number 2 team. But having said that, again, Bucks are going to make moves. Sixers are going to make moves. Odds are going to change. But right now, yes, the Knicks deserve to be there, absolutely.
I think Philadelphia finding that third piece is going to drastically shift these odds before we get into next NBA season. But at the moment, I would agree. Of course, the Knicks were 1 win away in Game 7 inside Madison Square Garden from reaching the franchise's first Eastern Conference Finals since the year 2000. And let's call a spade in the Eastern Conference as of this moment. Everybody is playing for second, to be that second team behind Boston to challenge the Celtics for an Eastern Conference crown. Of course, a lot can be figured out throughout the entirety of the offseason and through the regular season next year in the association. It's just where the odds makers have it. The Celtics still a short favorite to win championship number 19 next year. The Denver Nuggets, the second best price at plus 750. The New York Knicks, now the third best number to win the NBA championship next season at plus 850. Some other moves yesterday around the NBA. The Miami Heat draft Khalil Ware, 15th overall. He hopes to be in the front court for a while with Bam Adebayo, who is set to sign a 3-year, $166 million extension when the league year begins next week and next month on July 6th. Still 2 more years on his contract for Bam Adebayo, but we'll get some big money when all is said and done.
Yeah, absolutely, and rightfully so. He deserved that. And again, the price of the brick is going up in the NBA. These guys are making much, much more money. But also, if we're lining those players, also OG Anunoby, the reason, wow, he overpaid for him. Let me tell you something. OG gets to the market, he's getting almost something identical. Now, granted, you can pay your players more than other teams can. That's the advantage of having them on your team. You just absorb it into your cap and also the luxury tax. But it wasn't as if, we always go back to Daniel Jones, nobody's going to offer this guy any money. No. OG was probably going to the Philadelphia 76ers, to be honest, if he hit that market. So if you're the Knicks, you're like, do we think we overpay and keep him here, or do we let him walk and go to another team who can actually play against us? Good move there.
That contract extension, the 3-year deal, $166, that keeps him in Miami until 2029. That's Bam Adebayo. That's an average of about $55.3 million per year. This upcoming season, as of this moment, only 5 guys in the NBA are set to make more than $50 million. So again, it is that rising tide and the rising cap in the NBA. We also learned yesterday that Jimmy Butler will play for Miami this year, but is not intending to sign his player option for the following season. He'll test the free agency waters next summer. Nick Claxton, he remains in Brooklyn. 4-year deal, $100 million to return to the Nets. The Nets might be already looking at Cooper Flagg for the 2025 NBA draft. Around Major League Baseball. Up next, you're on the other one.
SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Fantasy sports today.
Can he be a guy that's really useful in your fantasy rotation? I think the answer is yes.
Game time decisions.
I'm going to lose the bet because he's injured again.
Betting above the rim.
He's got a broke J. That's all there is to it. He's got no confidence in that jump shot.
My thing you've always heard me say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Wondering when that was going to happen, and the answer is it just
Sometimes
did.
The bigger guy will have the advantage. Well, if the little guy can move, Joe, it's hard to hit the little guy sometimes when you're a big boy, right?
In-game live, prime time.
40-1, I'm going to take a little flyer on Justin Rose.
In-game live, overtime.
As you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
After Atlanta won the draft lottery, I was taking Ricochet number 1. When he was at plus 425, I said Ricochet's going number 1. Well, hot damn, who's the big minus money favorite to go number 1 in the draft? Zachary Ricochet. Hopefully you had jumped on this earlier enough because the trains left the station.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong. This is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
A Subway Series sweep this week at Citi Field in Queens between the New York Mets and the New York Yankees. If I would have said that back in May, a Subway Series sweep, you would have said, well, that's the best team in baseball, the New York Yankees handling the awful New York Mets. Not in June for that proud organization, and certainly not in the last 2 weeks after Grimace throughout the first pitch exactly 2 weeks ago yesterday. And in the 13 games since, the New York Mets are now 11-2 in a perfect 2-4-2 this year against their rivals, the Yankees. 12-2, the final score yesterday. 12-2 as the Mets jump all over Luis, don't call him Lucas Heel, and sweep the Subway Series at Citi Field. 12-2. What a win it was for the Amazons, DRS, and a Subway Series sweep.
Blowouts, rain delays, Grimace actually showing up, and not the official Grimace, but the fan Grimace showing up there. Here's the issue for the Yankees. We'll get into this game in a second. Forget about the fact they lost that game. Let's go back to the day before. Get your ace on the mound, Garrett Cole. Like, you know what? Start number 2, work some of those kinks out. Start number 1, didn't look all that good. Could be troublesome on the horizon. The one guy that you were looking at, and specifically with the Yankees as a staff, they were getting great pitching performances by guys coming into the season. We didn't anticipate that from. And one of those guys was Heel. You say to yourself, okay, finally had a bad start. He really needs a bounce back. And to be quite honest, yesterday I was buying into the bounce back, saying, you know what? That lineup for the Mets is red hot, but I think Heel bounces back. And I do think Minaya on the mound probably will give in at this point. You'll get a lot of runs. I should say a lot of runs, 5-6 runs, let's just say, by that New York Yankees lineup. That didn't happen. So now we're led to believe here with the New York Yankees. And again, Stan already on the shelf for 4 weeks. That's going to happen in Major League Baseball. Injuries happen. We understand that. It doesn't appear to be long-term. But now if we're taking a look at pitchers struggling on the mound that we didn't anticipate just a couple weeks ago, I'm not saying we're going to ring the alarm bells for the New York Yankees just yet because it's a long season. But that encouragement, because I talk about this so many times, Ben, coming out of spring training, didn't really know what I was going to get out of the Yankees. Good team, make the playoffs, no doubt about it. But were they that elite level? Because those question marks of the pitching staff and Garrett Cole. The pitching staff was fantastic. Garrett Cole was coming back. This team's going to kick it into overdrive, now stumbling around. So a little bit of worry creeping in that I probably didn't have a week and a half ago.
The New York Mets now 15-6 in the month of June. The New York Mets, who were the underdog in both of the games despite being at home in Queens, not in the Bronx inside Yankee Stadium, went outright in both of the Subway Series. The prices before, we showed you when speaking to Nicky Lattarulo earlier this week, minus 105 for a split of this 2-game set. The Yankees plus 172 to sweep the Subway Series. The Mets plus 450. There you go. And Aaron Judge hit a home run in both of the games of the Subway Series. He now has 30 homers this year and 77 RBIs. Both of those stats pace everybody in MLB. So the New York Mets are a great story. 11-2 in the Grimace era, 15-6 here in the month of June. But it is the polar opposite for the New York Yankees as of late. The Yanks have dropped 9 of their last 12 games. They have lost 3 in a row. They are 2-8 in their last 10. And I don't think we're smashing down the panic button as of right now. The Yankees still 52-30 this year. Donnie, for a team that always has sky-high expectations, even with some worries at the end of spring training. And for most of the season, the New York Yankees were delivering and matching those incredibly lofty expectations. But as of right now, I think there is a true reason to be concerned for New York.
No, there is. And also, here's where maybe your saving grace is at this point. I'll get to my second point in a second. But that first one here, imagine if the Baltimore Orioles were still rolling. Let's just say the Orioles are won 9 out of 10 games here, where they're wiping you off the board 3, 4, 5 games ahead of you. They're lucky that's not happening. But also to bring up a point on the Yankees, sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. I'm telling you right now, teams are always going to go through losing streaks. It happens. It's a long season, 4 or 5 games. You only win 2 out of your previous 10. Then you can flip it on and win like 8 out of your next 10. But here's the issue, which I think is a good one. that pressure on the front office for the Yankees, even if you technically don't need to make a move because you're not in danger of losing the division right now, you're not in danger of missing out on the playoffs, but sometimes with that pressure and those ticket prices that those Yankees fans pay and all that pressure over the years, there's a reason why they won a lot of championships. They didn't luck in the players. They could afford those players and play under that pressure in New York. Maybe the Yankees go out and say, you know what, let's get a pitcher now before everybody ramps up and needs one at the deadline. Right. Let me get a position player before it ramps up. Again, Ben has pointed out as well as myself, there is no panic button here in New York, but there's ways that you can stem the tide and say, let's not get this to we're 2-13 in our last 15 games and we're reeling at this point. We'll see how they work their way around, but I'm not panicked on the Yankees. It's just not a great look right now with the baseball they're playing.
Luis Gil, entering his start last week against the Orioles, was 9-1 this year with a 2.03 ERA. Won an inning and a third against Baltimore, gave up 7 earned runs yesterday, allowing 5 earned against the New York Mets, who are back to an even 500 at 39-39. I'm trying to track down the last time the Mets were at an even 500 this season, way back on May 7th when they were 18-18. Even longer than that for the Houston Astros, who before yesterday were not to an even 500 the entirety of the year. But after a 7-1 win yesterday against a team in the Colorado Rockies, as you would expect, with the Astros a -188 favorite in their 7th consecutive victory, Houston an even 500 for the first time this year. 40-40 for the Stros.
And they are supposed to be buried at this point right now. But again, it's not a 16-game season, a 17-game season like in the NFL. It's 162. You're going to be bad, you're going to be good. But for really the first 2.5 months, they were a bad baseball team. Like, they're ready to throw in the towel. And also, this win streak is not coming when, Ben, we typically say, like, hey, they got all their players back now. Now it's time to they're losing players on a day-to-day basis, cutting players that they owe millions and millions and millions of dollars to, and they're actually playing better right now. Arrighetti hasn't been a great pitcher. 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, no earned runs, 10 Ks yesterday. And that's from a guy that has an ERA coming in probably around 6 at that point, which he's now slightly below that 6 number. But you're supposed to beat the teams like the Colorado Rockies at home, which is what they're doing. But 2 weeks ago, I'm done with this baseball team. I still think I'm done with them. Right. But at the point they're 40-40 now, it just makes me laugh because they do have that championship pedigree as an organization. But unless they make major moves, sooner or later, they're going to go on a losing streak because why? They're just not good enough in the pitching staff right now.
You see the odds right there. The Mariners did win yesterday against the Rays to end out their midweek set, but it's only a 4.5-game lead for Seattle now over Houston. The Astros, once again, a minus money, -128 favorite to see the American League postseason. We got to put the fork back in the cupboard, though, because on June 2nd, the Astros were as low as 8 games below 500.
Crazy.
Now they're an even 40-40. Plenty more around MLB up next.
SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Fantasy sports today.
Can he be a guy that's really useful in your fantasy rotation? I think the answer is yes.
Game
And guess
time
what?
decisions.
I'm going to lose the bet because he's injured again.
Betting above the rim.
He's got a broke J. That's all there is to it. He's got no confidence in that jump shot.
My thing you've always heard me say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Wondering when that was going to happen, and the answer is it just
Sometimes you think
did.
the bigger guy will have the advantage. Well, if the little guy can move, Joe, it's hard to hit the little guy sometimes when you're a big boy, right?
In-game live, prime time.
40-1, I'm going to take a little flyer on Justin Rose.
In-game live, overtime.
As you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
After Atlanta won the draft lottery, I was taking Ricochet number 1. When he was at plus 425, I said Ricochet's going number 1. Well, hot damn, who's the big minus money favorite to go number 1 in the draft? Zachary Ricochet. Hopefully you had jumped on this earlier enough because the trains left the station.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Two streaks snapped yesterday in Major League Baseball inside Camden Yards. The Orioles were riding a 5-game losing skid. The Cleveland Guardians had the longest active win streak in the Bigs with 7 in a row. But the odds makers predicted an Orioles victory. Minus 205 was the moneyline price on Baltimore, and the O's make good on that. 4-3 the victory to avoid a sweep in this midweek set at home against Cleveland. Gunnar Henderson hit another home run yesterday. 26 long balls this year for Henderson. Second most in MLB, only behind Aaron Judge. Added on another RBI. Cedric Mullins, a home run to open it up for the Guardians as well. 4-2 the final. My apologies there. But Baltimore snaps that 5-game skid.
They needed to snap that too. And also coinciding here, if they can get on a win streak, starting to really put the pressure there on the New York Yankees, that could make a difference. But also yesterday, here's what I didn't anticipate. Thought we'd get runs. Some pretty good atmosphere down there at Camden Yards. Wind blowing out, mid-80s temperatures. And you got a couple home runs, which is usually key, and you'd get over a total. I think yesterday was around that 9. I think it was 9 price yesterday.
9,
yeah, exactly. So they stayed well under. But how about this? Carlos Carrasco, one of those guys I've been fading. Still in a loss, though. You'll take this. 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs overall. ERA still above 5. You need that to be better. But also on the opposite side, Rodriguez was one of those pitchers we talked about last year. And if you're saying this year, hey, you know what, his name doesn't come up that much, well, they got a number 1 there, which they got over from Milwaukee, which we'll talk about a little bit later today in Corbin Burns. But Rodriguez, 9-3 on the season, 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. Sometimes you need the younger guys to be a stopper. He was that yesterday. That's a quality ball club in Cleveland. The series have been a lot of fun, but that's a big win for the Orioles. They really needed that.
Was great in his Major League's debut last year for Grayson Rodriguez in his rookie campaign, continuing it over here into year number 2. Shohei Ohtani, another home run yesterday. Gavin Stone, what a performance on the south side of Chicago. He blanks the Sox, who are the worst team in baseball, with the worst offense in baseball, but still a complete game shutout out of Gavin Stone. 9 innings of work, only allowing 4 hits in total to Chicago as the Dodgers win 4-0 to sweep the White Sox in this midweek set.
Yeah, high fives all the way around you'll get from the bullpen, giving them a much-needed day off where a starting pitcher goes 9 innings. But also, this wasn't unanticipated yesterday. I thought this game would stay under the total. And even if you take a look at Fedde, 5 innings pitched and 4 earned runs wasn't all that good. But Soroka came in behind him and shut the door there on the Dodgers. But if you are a betting man, like, again, I am at this point, I didn't take any RBI props, but you know you have a good night where it's a 4-0 game. You know the RBIs yesterday? Ohtani, Hernandez, and Freeman. Probably exactly the 3 guys you would bet on that roster. It's interesting to see because some of these teams, it's great to see that they're winning low-scoring games because one thing that we talked about with the Dodgers entering into the season, a lot of injuries on that pitching staff, but you go, that's okay. That lineup 1 through 9 might be the best in baseball. They're injured at some positions and still picking up victories. Why? You slid Ohtani into that number 1 hole, and he's like, dude, I got this. 322 on the season, and every night you look at the standings, it feels like he's hitting another home run. So when you paid all of that money, dare I say right now, well worth it. My goodness.
Another home run, 25, the most in the National League. 2 consecutive days in Chicago with a long ball. 61 RBIs, that's top 5 in Major League Baseball as well. He's not pitching this year. This would be the year to get Shohei Ohtani in the MVP race, but he's still an odds-on favorite at minus 140. The Milwaukee Brewers yesterday walk it off for a 3-game sweep over the Texas Rangers, despite the Rangers being a road favorite in Wisconsin. More runs than anticipated, 9.5. The total does go over. Andrew Monasterio, a pinch hitter, the walk-off RBI in the home half of the 10th. 6-5 the victory for the Brew Crew.
Here's what we were doing yesterday, too, as we were sort of handicapping on the fly to end the show was, hey, man, Dallas Keuchel's back in baseball. Where can you jump on the bandwagon to beat him around? Well, they did yesterday. 4 innings pitched, 8 hits, 5 earned runs, and Keuchel's 11.25 ERA, welcome back, still wasn't even good enough to get a victory here for the the Texas Rangers. 37-43 overall for the world champions. And maybe we should start talk about sticking a fork in the Rangers as opposed to the Astros in the AL West.
I don't know if we're having technical difficulties, so we'll just keep talking
Let's
here
go
for
radio.
the final minute of this segment. But anyway, we keep spinning it around. And both teams entered this series, that being the Rangers and the Brewers, on very opposing trends. The Rangers actually entered winners of 4 straight. The Brewers had dropped 3 of 4 in San Diego. They sweep the Rangers in this midweek set. One final spot in Tampa. The Rays looking for a midweek series sweep over the Seattle Mariners. The M's win 5-2. Cal Raleigh hit a 3-run home run in the 6th.
One of those guys.
49 RBIs this year. Again, no idea if any of this is coming over the air, but Cal Raleigh looked pretty good yesterday.
Look, maybe we're just going to roll through commercial breaks and have some fun because baseball is the way to do it. But I thought yesterday, finally, the Seattle Mariners were the right side in this game. They won it, so
10,
good for them to move on at this
9,
point. All right, there you go. Let's close it out. Close
7.
it down, Professor.
You want me to take it?
Go ahead.
We got
Go
5
ahead.
seconds.
Yep.
More on the early line, hour 2 up there.
Boom.